Welcome to Culture Nepal. In our last 3 episodes, we talked about women and children of Nepal. This time, we will move into the history and culture. Nepal is a land of cultural mosaic as it was formed by the unification of many small independent municipalities or minor states. There is a great length of interesting history of formation of the country Nepal, which used to be far bigger than today. As we move from old Nepali history to new, we will try to explore the story with experts and ordinary citizens alike. We will start the discussion with prominent historian Dr. Ramesh Dhungel, who is an author of many books. Hi, welcome to Culture Nepal. Today we have very prominent historian of Nepali culture and history, Dr. Ramesh Dhungel, in our studio through Skype, and we will be discussing our Nepali history and culture in details from his expertise voice. Dr. Dhungel, could you please tell us more about your educational journey and background, please?
Yeah, I did my university first university education in Nepal. I completed master's degree from Tribhuvan University, which is the oldest leading university of Nepal in Nepalese cultural and historical studies. And then I just got opportunity to come to the United States, and I did another master degree in history in Virginia. And after that, I got opportunity to go to Columbia University, did another master degree and a couple of master degrees in MPhil, and completed my PhD in '98. And after that, I went back to Nepal and did work with Research Center for Nepal and Asian Studies there. This is my, experience related to educational institutions. And my area is just, in the beginning, cultural studies and history focused in Nepal and South Asia. Later on, I also focused on Tibetan and Himalayan studies.
And thank you. Um, I know Nepali history has a whole old, long stories, and I've always been fascinated with its beginning from the beginning. So we can also start the conversation from the beginning of the formation of modern Nepal. So Nepal also, one of the prominent thing that Nepal has is from the beginning it has been a country of diverse ethnic group. Could you please tell us how did this ethnic mosaic evolved in Nepal?
A very interesting question. Nepal's history. We have about near about 3,000 years of history that we have record of somehow. It is situated, as we all know, that between the two giants of Asia, China and India. So we have in northern Nepal, northern side of the country, people in different, migrated in different times from Tibetan area or northern area, and in the middle hill and southern area, in the middle hill mixed type of community, people migrated from different, basically mostly people migrated from Indian plains. We have, so this is how our ethnic mosaic is formed. So we have three types of geographical regions: Himal, Middle Hill, and Tarai, and we have different diversities of people from Indian origin people as well as Tibetan and northern Chinese, Mongol origin people. Mixture is there. So from the very beginning, history also is similar because people who migrated from north, they brought the culture from that area, and who migrated from south, they brought culture from that area. So Nepalese culture is mixture of the both Indian, northern Indian, and the I would say Tibetan dominated or Tibetan influenced culture. So we have ethnic communities also related to both sides. And also, if we go through the history of Nepal, particularly people from northwestern side entered into the present day Nepalese territory, and they played an important role to form the country's history. This is how we can discuss about the ethnicity of Nepal.
So, also, there is so much influence in Vedic culture in Nepal, and that probably came from southern, I believe. So, can you please tell us a little bit more about Vedic culture and how it influenced Nepali?
Yeah, it's as I said before, we have the mixture of both, combination of both uh, non-Vedic, Mongol dominated or influence. I would say it would be rather to use the term influence, as well as the northern Indian cultural influence, which is definitely Vedic in the beginning. Later on, we have Buddhist, all these kinds of things, traditions also. So the whole Nepalese, present day Nepal's territory falls within the broader cultural geography of, I would say, Aryabharta, or the bigger the continent of that area, which is which was used to be dominated by the Vedic one. So religious beliefs or beliefs, traditions that we have in Nepal has direct and deeper influence we can find in Nepal. But that doesn't mean that we have only Vedic traditions, domination of Vedic traditions. We have other, which we have got from northern area, northern regions, particularly through Tibetan region, that we have Mongol dominated old shamanistic, culture. Also, we can find in Nepal.
Yes, we talk about Vedic culture and non-Vedic culture, and I think this topic is a huge topic in its own. But briefly, could you tell our audience what it means so
Yeah,
that we have an
Vedic.
understanding?
Vedic means Vedic civilization or Vedic culture means these days we put these things under the umbrella of Hindu. But the term Hindu itself uh, doesn't have that old, in terms of religion, there is no historical term known as Hindu. This came quite lately, but in the beginning, the people who used to live around Indus Valley region used to be known as Sindhu, and the term Hindu and Indus or Hindu, have been formed from. We can find the history that they are originated. These terms were originated from one term, that Sindhu, the river or Sindhu Valley civilizations and people living in that area, and their beliefs and religious systems, traditions emerged from that area, later known as Hindu. The Hindu, there are four types of Vedas. Particularly the earlier one is Rig Veda, and Yajurved, Samved, all these Vedas and Brahminical religion, texts we find in history of this tradition. Particularly these days, what we call Sanatana or our Hindu religion has linkage with Vedic traditions. So quite deeper influence we can find in Nepal, and it used to be the national religion also, until it became kind of republican state or something like that. So this we have temples, Hindu temples, Hindu temple of Pashupatinath or Muktinath, all very very highly venerated temples in that in our country. All these are the result of the influence of Vedic traditions. But Vedic itself, later on, it has a history, broader history. Since this is also called Sanatana, this has a tradition of including all the local traditions also. So within Hinduism, what we find, or within Vedic religions, what we find is just local traditions are also included within that religious belief or religious system. That's why it was easy to influence in Nepal, because we had old, I would say, animistic traditions in different hill areas, remote areas. All those were protected or preserved within the greater traditions of Hindu belief. That is what broadly we call Vedic tradition.
Yeah. So we have a lot of ethnic groups in Nepal who came from different north and southern parts of the land, and then within that ethnic group, the Vedic culture influenced very heavily and deeply. So, Dr. Dungel, we were talking about ethnic groups in Nepal. How many ethnic groups were there in the beginning, and how has it changed to the present country?
To understand this particular point clearly, we need to know about the territory of Nepal itself first, because up to which area that used to be known as Nepal,
right?
Whether we should include whole of Tarai or western, Kumaon, Garhwal or other places, or we just narrow down the history within the valley and surrounding areas. This is the question. If we talk about the valley, we have our historical sources, and historians are just trying to understand who are these people, who were these people, Gopalas, Aviras, Kiratas, or Lichavis.
So are they the earlier ruler of Nepal?
Yes. Of course,
Yes.
in dynastic history also we get the reference of all these communities as rulers as well. So that is just related to central Nepal or Himalayan region. For example, Kiratas, early Gopalas or Aviras or Kiratas, but we are not very much clear. Our history is not that much clear whether the Kiratas were the only people living in those days, or other from southern area as well. But coming to the Lichavis time, we have clear evidence that people coming from or rulers coming from southern area, which means northern Indian territory or Indian plains, also were there, and they were rulers. Some historians and scholars explain that early settlers of Nepal Nepal used to be known as Nip. That's the term which is linked with the present day name Nepal. Nep and Ala, the place of the community or race called Nip. And they are talking, trying to understand or trying to explain that those Nip people were Kiratas and early settlers were there. They were the early settlers.
Okay. Actually, my question comes like, when did the contemporary Nepali history began?
The term contemporary is not easy to explain, because contemporary could be our time, or contemporary can be explained as recent change or beginning from modern Nepal. So if we talk broadly about the timeline beginning from the unification of Nepal, which is broadly or usually generally known as modern Nepal.
So there is a difference between contemporary Nepal and modern Nepal. And so how is it different than early Nepal? Like there's a
it's in Nepalese history, we have history of modern Nepal begins with the unification movement of Prithvinarayan Shah, which was done around the late 18th century. So this is the breaking line between dividing line between the earlier Nepal and the modern Nepal. This is what historians are just demarcating. So that's a tentative demarcation. The modern history of modern Nepal begins with the time of Prithvinarayan Saha, or time of the unification. So before that, before the unification, which is late 18th century, I just said. So before that, we used to have, we had, almost about 60, 70 little, small petty principalities within the territory of modern Nepal, this Nepal. So princely states were there, and some feudatories were there. Even before that, we had three major powers within this territory. In northwest Nepal, there were Khasas. It used to be known as Yachepa Tarai area. They also ruled the eastern, middle hill and Himalayan region. Also, they were known, but they were basically from Tarai, Palpa, Butol, all these areas, and coming towards east, the entire Tarai region was ruled by the Senas. And before the Senas, there was a state known as Tirhut. The capital of that was Simrongarh. Even before that, we can go up to the time of Buddha, Lumbini or Kapil Vastu. Okay. So when modern, history of modern Nepal began, or unification movement started, all these three powers were slowly captured by, and that is the beginning of modern Nepal. That was the process was started by Prithvinarayan Saha from Gorkha. The Gorkha itself used to be one of the fragments of the great Khasas of earlier time. So this is tentatively the Nepalese, history, how modern Nepal was formed. But culturally and politically, it was. We see that there is a kind of a domination of the Khasas, or influence, I would say, rather say influence of the Khasas, because the Gorkha itself was a fragment. One of the powerful descendants of the Khasas, early Khasas. So they became instrumental to create this nation. This is why we can tell that influence of the Khasas or Khasa culture or Khasa's effort is there. After the fall of the Tirauth, all these ruling class, ruling families migrated towards Kathmandu Valley. They also became, I would say, broadly Newar. So cultures they brought from earlier time, brought from India, flourished in southern, Nepalese Tarai, and that was brought to the valley, central Nepal, because of the invasion and destruction of their kingdom there.
Yes.
So similarly, if we go back to Buddha's time, earlier time, after the destruction of culture in that area or domination, our Buddhist followers of Buddha's migrated to the so culture of that time, cultural traditions, religious values were also, brought to the Kathmandu Valley. So
there is a very much of mix of very different cultures, background, and also the geographical background, and history and culture are so blended together in a very complex way that it's very deeper discussions, I think.
Of course.
So we have even if our Nepal is a small country, there is a lot of diverse and historical blend to explain the Nepali culture and history at this point. So it is a huge this is a topic of huge discussions. And to make it simplify, let's focus this time into a historic account of the country. So we were talking about our earlier Nepali history. And when we were talking about earlier Nepali history, I also remember that there is, we hear a lot about national historic personalities such as Bahadur Saha. When we're talking about early history, that was a modern history that I think I'm thinking about. But in earlier Nepali history, there was vibhutis, like what we call vibhutis in Nepali language, like Sita and Janak and King Mandev and Angshu Varmas and Ramsa, all other. What are their significance and how do you explain these personalities in brief?
It's because of the influence of, I think, European influence during Panchayat regime in Nepal. Before this democratic change, under the process of Nepalization, King Mahendra thought that special personalities should be recognized as the symbol of the formation of the country, so that it would be more convincing thing for the process of Nepalization. And they just started to evaluate the past, going through the history of war between Nepal and British India, and also through religious and traditional values, who going through the history of the influence in Nepalese society, who were the particular special figures who had played important role to shape up the society and culture. So they tried to pick up some of the important names, personalities.
So there is a two different group of those distinct historic personality. One was an early Nepali history, which could be legendary, but also it reflects the sentiment and values of culture, Nepali culture, right?
Yeah,
And then
exactly. I had
and then another group, the next
regarding
group
this.
is the next group is the heroic personality that actually based upon actual history.
Exactly,
Okay,
exactly. For
in a
example,
modern Nepal, which is a modern Nepali history, which has a
exactly.
okay.
Other people, who fought against British British India at that time to make Nepal independent, keep Nepal independent. So these people, names of these personalities have been included, and also uh, uh, personalities lives in only we can find in legends or epics, or these people have been included also. They thought, I guess they thought that influencing society is there somehow. Both types of people, but there is a problem in this list, though. For example, if you ask one question, raise a question like, would you salute on the same platform to Sita as well as to a person, a Pasang Lamu or something like that, mountain climbers. Or if you venerate, I would say, Amar Singh Thapa or Janak in the same platform, this is just, and Buddha
Right.
also. That's why we are very fortunate to have this. But that doesn't mean that you can venerate all these recent, people of our time as well as those divinities in the same platform.
Right.
This is pretty odd, but that has to be adjusted. But in most cases, the evaluation what they made to make a list was not bad, though.
Right.
These are the things that very difficult to reconcile.
Right.
But because religious personalities you keep in your special place in our house. Sita is like that, right? Ramchandra's wife.
Right.
Your
Right.
worship is like Devi, divinity.
Right.
We have to make a list of those peoples who have contributed to make modern Nepal
Right.
as we have now.
Right.
So, and you can make separate list of divinities or special names from epics and other that we have influenced. We have been influenced with a different set of names, respecting different way.
Right. So, from our today's discussion, it's very clear to me that there is a two sections of Nepali history: early history and modern history.
Right.
Right. So, an early history has a lot of influence in culture and political practices of modern Nepal, which is a subject of deeper studies in itself. But moving from the early history, can we focus a little bit more on modern history, how it began and how it started, and how the unification of, which is the big, starting point of modern Nepal began, and like we hear a lot about Gorkha soldiers and how we come to this point from the modern history, beginning of the modern history.
Yeah, if you go through the writings or books written by different people or foreign writers or Nepalese, we find different versions in this particular question. So far as my own opinion is concerned, through my own, this was what you call in the period of time that all those scattered princely states, in a stronger country had to be in existence. They had to be united, either by force or by alliance. Otherwise, the super imperial powers were fighting to occupy the region. And over 600 princely states were being dismantled one by one in the whole, you know, uh, Indian subcontinent, or India, I would say. There were even stronger states than Nepal itself within Indian territory at that time. All were just captured by the British Empire later on, but imperial powers were fighting to get access or to get control of it before that. And if we had to have one particular entity in the Himalayan region, the notion of making one country was essential that time. And very surprisingly, not from the center of culture of the Himalaya, but from a very corner or a small improvised area, the Gorkha, poor state, envisioned, they realized the need of that existence of our history.
The way I look at Prithvi Narayan Saha, who began this modern history of Nepal as a unifying factor to preserve this unique culture that we have it today. Is that a correct way of saying it?
It's not only this campaign or this success campaign help preserve the culture of Nepal, but also the cultures of the region itself. In that sense, people from the whole of South Asia or Asia should salute Prithvi Narayan Saha, I would say.
Right.
Because we discussed before Vedic culture, right?
Very rich, yes.
Yeah, we discussed before shamanistic culture of northwestern Nepal or Kailash Mansarovar area. Or we discussed about Mongolian cultures, of northern area, China or Tibet. All these things, these cultural cultures of the region were preserved. That's why Prithvi Narayan Saha himself, if you remember, claimed that he was able to make a place, safe place for the whole regional cultures. For example, in his own term, this is Nepal भनेको असली हिन्दुस्तान रहेछ. This is what he says. The translation of that would be, I came to realize later, I came to know that I'm convinced now that this I was able to make a place, safe place for all cultures and traditions of Hindustana, the greater whole of India, not only the Himalayan region, but whole of
Indian continent, Indian subcontinent.
That means Buddhist tradition, Hindu traditions, or local traditions, Shaktism, all different types of Sanatana tradition.
Right.
Because he also says that दक्षिण को बादशाह महाचतुर छ, हिन्दुस्तान दबाइरहेछ, सर जिमीमा परिरहेछ. All those traditions and people are being suppressed under the dust of their feet.
Right. Almost like America, today is America at that time.
We have shamanistic traditions, we have Hindu traditions, we have Shakti, local tradition, we have Kirat tradition. In a small region, the area, Nepal, in terms of territory, is really small one. Not by population though. Population
not by population, but spiritually, in a spirit. That immigration, a lot of people came from different places to settle for peace and prosperity, kind of
Exactly.
sense.
So within that small territory, hundreds of different cultural things or
Right.
cultural traditions have been preserved, so as languages.
Yes.
So this is a unique place.
And very
what
tolerant, very, very tolerant.
exactly,
We had the equality for everybody. They all live in peace together.
exactly.
Yeah.
If you compare with the history of other parts of the world, you can find no doubt that Nepal, the territory or country, created or unified by Prithviraj Shah has been peaceful.
Right.
Except some of the recent phenomenon, it's completely
Right.
unfortunate though.
Right. That
Even
we will go that part later, but right now let's focus on our history. So also when we were in high school student, we were in our history classes, we were talked about Rana regime of Nepal extensively. Historians have highly criticized about this regime as an autocratic one. So could you please let us see how it evolved from Prithviraj Shah's ruling to this Rana regime, and why is it like the historic account, how how we justify that, and what is the story, actual story behind it, the facts?
Yeah, Rana period. It's about 104 years of history. It's quite long, a century or more, a little more. Has been highly criticized in history books. But to evaluate, to revisit the history critically, we have to be very careful about the situation of that time. Political situation of the time. Yes, Janga Bahadur is the founder of Rana regime, who just started, changed Nepali traditional Nepali foreign policy after the unification after the emergence of modern Nepal, are implemented by Prithviraj Shah. Janga Bahadur, or beginning of Rana regime, started a new policy, foreign policy, that was changing policy of supporting the Britishers rather than going against the Britishers. And if we evaluate this, incident or this change, why this happened? Why Janga Bahadur decided to change that at the time? I would say, if to me, I find a completely different understanding, because if the main thing was the matter of existence of the country, because in those days when Prithviraj Shah started, that was necessary to take a policy of fighting or going against with another, superpower who was just trying to capture the entire territory. But after the Treaty of Sugoli, the different situation was completely different. Treaty of Sugoli made our area fixed. Treaty of Sugoli didn't. After that, we didn't get any opportunity to go further, attacking or extending the territory. But our task was to save the rest of the territory, or try to find by making alliance, if you can do, if you can bring anything. And also also you needed a recognition there, because you were not in a position to fight against British Empire that time. So making an alliance and getting benefit was the necessary what you call policy of the time.
We were taught so different in our school system when we were in high school, and I'm just curious, like how is it justified? The history that was in a textbook.
It's just the influence of the change of 1950 or 51. This what we call is Sat Sal, the change of Sat, political change of 1950. That time, the general understanding or motion was that was against Rana regime.
Right.
But within the 104 years of history, you find this stage, founding stage by Janga Bahadur, and later Bir Shamsher's time, and slowly into Janga Shamsher's time. And you can also find the time of Padma Shamsher, who was first person to try to promulgate the little better constitution that time.
Right.
So different stages of Rana regime.
Right.
So you cannot just make
blank statement,
one packet or one bucket of thing.
Right.
So Janga Bahadur didn't take any national property to put in international banks.
Right.
But later other Ranas did. You
Right.
know? So completely different. And he was also able to bring the impossible, the territory which was impossible, made impossible. The Treaty of Sugauli, which is called, which used to be known as Naya Muluk, the whole entire Western territory of Western Terai of Nepal. So that is, and he was so smart even to develop settlements like Nepal, cities, townships, and named after Nepal, so that so thoughtful that it won't go again back to India.
Right.
Nepal government means the city of Nepal or something.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Smart idea.
Yeah.
And the whole entire Western Nepalese Terai, territory of Western Nepalese Terai, was brought back by Janga Bahadur from British India by making alliance with his diplomatic policy rather than fighting. The fighting was not possible that time.
Right.
And also he, at the same time, he had a policy of supporting Britishers, but he also did put some effort to get recognition as an independent country, because that time we didn't have international institutions, organizations like League of Nations or World, UNO.
Right. Right. So the British
So-
were British were in power.
Had to be
And right.
to be recognized superpower,
Yes.
and to take Nepali name of Nepal to West world, go that proximity.
Right.
Janga Bahadur was very successful.
Rulers had been very wisely managed to keep Nepal as a sovereign, independent country, even during the time when British and other Western countries ruled the world.
Exactly.
And that is something to be, fascinated about and studied.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you look at the history of Maharashtra, or that remained independent because of these efforts.
Right. So the wisdom of diplomacy was there with them.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
then they were able to peacefully keep the nation going.
Exactly. Only some discrepancies you can find, or some short-sightedness. Although there are some good aspects of Bhimsen Thapa as well, but Bhimsen Thapa did some mistakes that he continuously tried to fight, keep fighting with the Britishers. That was too late. He had to be thoughtful, like what Jang Bahadur was. Later. So that's why we lost our 1/3 of territory already extended, and saving that the rest of the territory was also a challenging task that Jang Bahadur was able to do.
Right.
And Bhimsen Thapa wanted to send his nephew, a representative of his government to Britain. He was not able to do, fix that diplomacy.
Right.
That process was failed.
This is a very interesting thing for me, Dr. Dungel, because when I was a child, I pictured Janga Bahadur as this cruel monster who ruled Nepal and there was no liberty, and that's really opposite of what he is. And now it seems like he has been a thoughtful leader, politician who wanted to develop nation in a very thoughtful way without destroying what the goodness of it. So
yeah, we cannot just say Janga Bahadur was always, good or best person, but we are talking about the history of Nepalese nationalism. History of Nepalese independence, and the making of modern Nepal.
Right.
We find Janga Bahadur's place is also quite respected as well.
Right.
We have to give credit, although discrepancies and problems are there, and you cannot just judge the rulers or people from the eyes of your time.
Right.
To blame or to give credit of that time.
Right.
Because if you talk about Bhanubhakta himself,
Right.
he was writing Badhu Shiksha,
Right.
and if you compare with the women's right in modern time, this would not be fair to Bhanubhakta.
Right.
Women were getting problem in different households. So by his own standard, his understanding, he wrote to help them out.
Right. And also, I think, Dr. Dungel, there is so much to talk about our history and cultures, but I think this is a really good point to close for today's session. I would like to also let our audience know about your work. You have done a lot of, you have published, you have extensive publications of your own studies and work.
Right.
Please, could you please, let us know about your publications to refer back, and then.
Sure. We cannot do the whole history and cultural value system of a country which has a quite longest period of from its inception. It is always independent, and quite many human traditions are there. We need to delve into this issue in different episodes. Definitely, we just generalize the picture of Nepal today. We can delve into different aspects in coming episodes if time allows us.
Right.
And coming to the point of my contributions, I have hundreds of articles in journals, international and national and local papers, some quite many research related and some general articles. And I have books, research related books. My important books I just claim as is History of Mustang, The Kingdom of Law, which is itself used to be an independent principality in historic period, and that became part of Nepal later on in the border of Nepal and Tibet, China these days. That's the district named Mustang is still there,
Right.
but the kingdom was even way bigger than the district one, and that's Buddhist Himalayan kingdom. I did research for my PhD, and that has been published. And I have several other books. One is related to Nepalese heritage. Uh, art heritage preserved in Metropolitan Museum of Art in Nepal, in New York. That's The Lost Heritage is the title of the book. And I have two books on economic history of Nepal. The first one is Ancient Economy, the economic history of ancient Nepal, and the other one is Economic History of Kathmandu Valley, published. And I have also some other books on pilgrimage of Muktinath and economic and social. All these books are published, and I have contributed some sections of encyclopedia type of book, like if you talk about related to yourself, Immigrant Encyclopedia, published by Macmillan Company here in New York, and the project was from one university of this country. That is, the book is called American Immigrant Cultures, Builders of a Nation, and Nepalese section is my work in that book. And some other encyclopedia I have contributed to some other encyclopedia also, Encyclopedia of Knowledge or something. Knowledge one is one, and articles on Buddhist studies, cultural studies, heritage studies, history. I have published among my over 200 articles. This is what I have done.
Okay, and also you also have some organization that you're working on. What are the organization you are?
Yeah, I did work. I did work for Tribhuvan University, from where I did my first master's degree. I was affiliated with Research Center for Nepal and Asian Studies. In which I just resigned last year. Founded colleges, some colleges were of the Research Council of the university. So as well as I'm just working as supervisors to PhD students from that university. Several students are under my supervision, and I have several public institutions I'm working. I'm related with even today.
That's great. So with that note, I hope we will be able to continue more in future our discussions on not only in history but also in culture, and as I know that you also are knowledgeable in Southeast Asian culture as a whole, not just Nepal. So we're very, very fortunate to have you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to give my research outcome, my work, my understanding about Nepalese culture and history. And this is really an important effort that you have been doing to make people know about one of the richest treasure of human civilization. I would put that way, rather than just only Nepalese, because it is Nepali, or it is now as a Nepali citizen or Nepali people of Nepali origin, we have a special sentiment. But broadly, is that this is to talk about Nepali culture, to talk about Nepali history is also about the very important aspects or old heritage or important heritage of human civilization. So
Yeah.
there's a continuous what you call local traditions preserved in this country. That's why we put some of the things, it's just cursory discussion only today we made, but it's very important, and I hope public, those who are interested to this part of the world, we would be always thankful to them if they have some time, spare time to go into it and to understand, as taking it as history of human civilization, part of human civilization, rather than only Nepalese history.
Right.
And I would thank you. I also thank you very much for this opportunity. And if at least some segments of people who would be convinced about our ideas, our knowledge, our which we share, that would be of our success, or consider as success. And thank you very much giving this opportunity again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and I hope to have you more and then discuss more on these aspects, and I'm sure it will be very valuable and beneficial to the scholar in history, whoever is interested in history, and hopefully will preserve this culture for peace, for everybody to enjoy a better world. So with that, I think we will just end our today's discussion, and then we will look forward to future elaboration of all the topics that we discussed today. Thank you, Doctor.
Sure.
Thank you.